Well everyone, this is it. We've somehow made our way to the grand finale of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Maxi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog, or most people call it Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. For the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3. So last time we've essentially did manage to finish up everything in Silver Story by taking on not only the final level in Silver Story, which appears to be Flame Core, and overall I somehow achieved the glorious S rank at the end, despite the fact I've almost messed up in the ending portion, and on top of that we somehow also take down the forms of Iblis Phase 3. And that was actually quite challenging, I'm not gonna lie, mainly because of the time limit system. So because of that though, yeah, as a result, we did somehow ended up getting the B rank, but that's just mainly because of time and all that stuff. So today, for this video folks, is that, as you can tell, since that we somehow not only completed Silver Story, but also with Shadow Story and even Sonic Story. And something I want to classify for mentioning about this is that I love the fact that we did somehow manage to collect certain amount of lives between 3 stories combined. Like for instance, we've got 50 lives for Sonic, 30 lives for Shadow, and 20 lives for Silver, making a grand total of 100 lives to accumulate. So that's actually pretty swell, I might add. Especially noticeable because well, like I said before, I already know about this game so many times. So anyway, today for this video folks, is that we're about to be entering into the last episode, or should I say the last story, about the fact, no matter what though, is about the fact that we now ended up in a true finale of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Now as far as I'm aware, it does manage to contain only one level as well as one last boss fight. So with that being said, let's jump right into the last story in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. By the way, something I want to mention about is that before you start everything for the sake of the last story, there's going to be not only a bunch of cutscenes, but also a lot of loading screens, by the way, so get used to it.
Sonic! Sonic!
No! Sonic is dead, so that means Sonic Cross Shadow Generations is not coming. Oh, I'm just kidding, it's still gonna be releasing.
Yes, Elise. Don't cry. No matter what happens.
Oh, no!
Finally, the seal is broken. At long last, I'll be able to join with you. Iblis! Now, Chaos Emerald. It's time for the final curtain call.
So Elise did somehow cry, so that means Iblis have been released. So meanwhile, back in Dusty Desert, so with Mephiles and Iblis decides they're able to combine into Solaris thanks to the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and on top of that, Sonic is dead. Does this mean this is gonna be the end of us?
What is this? Where are we? What's going on?
Is this because of that light?
The Chaos Emerald has disappeared.
Silver?
What are you doing here? This is all so confusing.
It's all because of Solaris.
It seems we were all caught by the spatial distortion. Iblis's seal has been broken. Due to Mephiles' manipulation.
Sonic? No. You don't think...
Sonic!
Mephiles played us all for fools. His plan all along was to cause the princess to be so consumed with despair that she'd cry.
So that's why he wanted me to kill Sonic before. Solaris!
This creature will consume all existing timelines, and time itself will collapse and disappear into nothingness.
The instability of time caused this time-space rift.
It won't remain for much longer.
We've no time to waste! We've got to defeat it now!
No, it is a transcendent life form that exists in the past, present, and future. Defeating it here, now, would do nothing.
No, I won't give up. There has to be a way. If you say it exists in the past, present, and future, I'll destroy them all at once!
Certainly. It might have been possible if he was still alive.
Sonic! Sonic!
Sonic,
What's the matter?
I feel Sonic's presence in the wind. I don't think he's dead yet. I'm sure of it. It's not too late.
Of course! Let's call him back with the power of the Chaos Emeralds! focus your thoughts on using its power to perform this miracle. You can do it, Princess.
I can?
You were the vessel that was used to seal Iblis. You should be able to use the gem's power to rescue Sonic's soul.
I'll do it.
Solaris flung the Chaos Emeralds to the distant corners of this distorted world.
To collect them all in time, we'll have to split up.
I'll go too. Because it's for Sonic. So Elise, watch over him.
So basically we need to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, so not only we can able to stop Solaris, but also we need to revive Sonic. So because of that, here we go on to the true final level in the game, which appears to be the end of the world. So kind of think about it though, because obviously we have to go through not only 7 different levels based off from 7 different stages, but also we have to play as all 7 of those playable characters, at least from now on. Because as far as I'm aware, we can't play as Sonic in this stage just because he's dead. And as far as Blaze the Cat is concerned, well, obviously she's pretty much eradicated during the Evolves of Silver storyline. So obviously she's not playable on that stage either. So it might be a little bit bummer though, because out of all of the actual true final levels in any of the 3D Sonic games, next to the forms of Eggman Land in Sonic Unleashed, specifically the Xbox 360 version / PlayStation 3 version, this is by far not only is the hardest stage in the entire game, but it's also one of the worst final levels in any 3D Sonic games, mainly because of this very annoying gimmick, or should I say, one nasty gimmick. That would be the time holes they managed able to appear out of thin air, and on top of that, we must avoid those time holes at all costs, because if you dare touch those warp holes, basically you die automatically. So because of that though, it doesn't matter how many rings you're going to be collecting though. So basically, no matter what though, is about the fact that we must able to make our way towards the end of this segment, where you're trying to able to obtain a Chaos Emerald, and then once you're able to collect one of those Chaos Emeralds, then you move on to the next. So, and as I mentioned this before, we need to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, and hopefully we can save Sonic. So because of that though, just ensure for the fact that we can able to stop the main threat, which appears to be Solaris after all. So, obviously, the only playable characters you can only experience in this entire stage, which there are Tails, as well as E123 Omega, alongside with Knuckles, Silver the Hedgehog, alongside with Rouge, Amy, and finally Shadow the Hedgehog. So, as I mentioned this before, the only 2 playable characters are probably not going to be playable on this stage, which appears to be by the forms of not only Sonic, but also Blaze as well. So, unfortunately though, is about the fact that 2 of those best playable characters in the game aren't playable in one of the worst levels ever made. So, yeah, you have to able to play as all 7 of those lame playable characters, I must say. Clearly because of the forms of stiff momentum and all that stuff. So, relatively speaking, though, it's about the fact that I can't even believe by saying this, is about the fact that, usually, relatively speaking, this level is going to be life's drainers if you're not paying attention to the forms of those little, time warp holes. So, relatively speaking though, as you can tell, in order to able to get rid of those time holes, as you can tell, is that we need to touch this specific Soliana object thing right there, as you saw on the right. So basically, if you dare manage to activate that, this will basically get rid of the forms of those time holes. Well, only lasted for about 5 seconds. Not all the time though, but just only 5 seconds. So because of that though, after 5 seconds is up, this means that the time warp holes will respawn. This means not only the blue variations, which obviously instantly kills you, but also the red variants, which as a result, the red variants will able to actually cause those box containers will able to spawn out of it. So because of that, it doesn't really matter if it's either the wooden crate, or potentially speaking of with the actual silver container, and on top of that, the explosive boxes as well. And if I were you, you probably should able to skip over the entire combat when it comes to dealing with enemies and such, because obviously the more you're trying to deal with those enemies, well, assuming if you really want to go after all of those points you want to accumulate, but it's also worth noting for is about the fact that if you did manage to get distracted with the forms of a lot of combat, basically that is about the fact that you're about to get sucked up by the forms of this blue time warp hull. So because of that though, you really want to avoid combat. Although there are some situations that we must force to able to get rid of all the enemies in order to able to progress. So yeah, I can totally see why about the fact that this level is by far the worst final levels in any other 3D Sonic game, next to Eggman Land on Sonic Unleashed, specifically the HD version of that game. So yeah, as a result, yeah, this level is going to be pretty frustrating, especially noticeable if you have a first time experiencing this stage. Well, good luck, because obviously you're going to need your luck, because you know what I'm saying. So, anyways, a few things I want to talk about this is that today's date, of course, is the 22nd of March today, in some cases in 2024 today. And guess what, everybody? Is that Princess Peach Showtime has recently came out today for the Nintendo Switch. But that doesn't stop there, because also during around that time, it's about the fact that I was originally trying to able to mention about the forms of how the review scores actually turns out to be, for the sake of the forms of Princess Peach Showtime, but I will say it's about the fact that it's probably best if we let Starlight Glimmer will mention more about it if she decides to go back onto Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake for the Nintendo Switch, so just to ensure for the fact that she will mention about the forms of a lot of topics in regards to the forms of Princess Peach Showtime's release, and especially noticeable with the forms that the reviewers are like. So yeah, everything else comes together. But anyways, but that doesn't stop there on the other hand though, because as it turns out, recently also during the Advanced event today, we've actually come across into ourselves a brand new news update in regards to the forms of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And this time what appears to be by the forms of, get this, the final spirits they are able to actually bring for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which they are both related to not only Princess Peach Showtime, as I mentioned it is earlier, but it's also with the forms of, get this, we are finally about to be getting certain spirits based off from Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So yeah, that seems pretty fantastic in my opinion, especially noticeable because, well, obviously I will try to able to unlock those spirits later on tonight. So exponentially speaking, I was about the fact that once I'm basically done with all these spirit battles, as far as I'm aware, then basically my entire completionist of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is going to be done for now. Well, apart from the forms of that particular multi-man Smash mode, which honestly, to me, it's just bragging rights, especially noticeable because I don't think it's necessary for me to able to actually just go for that particular all of the medal runs for all of these characters for the sake of not only all-star symmetry and also with the forms of well, just anything else in general. So I am perfectly fine, so that way I can able to actually complete the entire main objectives, including with certain missions, and you've already named the rest. So anyway, so and as you can tell, we're now onto the halfway point in terms of the end of the world. So as a result, no matter what though, is about the fact that obviously there are 7 stages we can able to go into. Is that I believe the amount of stages we can able to go into is not only Crisis City, but also with the forms of Flame Core, Tropical Jungle, alongside with Dusty Desert, and as you can tell, we now ended up in Wave Ocean. There's also going to be White Acropolis, and the final one, which appears to be Kingdom Valley. Now, there are only 2 stages that I'm probably not going to include in this entire stage, which there are Radical Train, including Aquatic Base. So because of that though, I think it makes a little bit more sense to able to actually give that specific amount of those specific segments. Although, the only drawback with this stage though, in addition of how the fact that this stage is automatically frustrating as it is, you have to sit through all 7 load screens throughout the majority of this entire stage. And because of that though, yeah, it's going to be ridiculously long, especially noticeable because no matter what though, yeah, you have to sit through a lot of pace-breaking parts, especially noticeable because no matter what though, if you dare get a game over though, you have to go through all of these loading screens all over again, which actually better yet, you have to sit for the load times of these cutscenes too. Like, I can totally see why a lot of people got super duper frustrated with this stage if for those who have the first time experiencing this. And boy, whenever I got to this point, for the first time ever, whenever I first played this on the Xbox 360 version, my god, I got about a grand total of 5 game overs on this run. Especially noticeable, well, thankfully though in the later years to come, I'm getting a little bit more better at it, but it's just about the fact that, again, with first impressions, it's just pretty much awful. Especially noticeable because obviously you never expect of what's to come, and on top of that, you might exactly not know about the actual the main level's gimmick is all about, and it's just, you know, it's pretty messy in general, so... Anyways, and as far as I'm aware, is that those stupid, time warp holes is just pure evil. Like, imagine this, right? Oh, you kidding me? The hit detection is so bad. But obviously, if you couldn't tell, yeah, we do need to deal with these enemies right here in order to progress. So, and I'm pretty sure no matter what though, it's about the fact that unlike in Journey forms have been not only in Sonic's story, but also with Shadow's story, and especially noticeable with Silver's story, thankfully there's no hard mode on the stage. Because thank goodness, because if it does have hard mode, oh my god, I'm about to get a lot of wrecked around here. And, in addition to that though, it's about the fact you do realize about the fact that the actual life system has been reset. Like, meaning about the fact that, you guys even remember back in Sonic Adventure 2, including probably Sonic Heroes or something, basically all those lives you've accumulated has been carried over into a different story. Well, unfortunately though, in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, every time whenever you go into a different story campaign, no matter what, how many lives you somehow obtained, basically though, as you can tell, when you first start the forms of the last story segment, your lives counter has been gone back to 5, and as a result, yeah, it's a little bit step backwards compared to the forms of how it does it in Sonic Adventure 2, where basically though, imagine this right, I somehow got 99 lives during the forms of it not only in Hero story, but also in the Dark Side story, and eventually at some point, whenever I got to the last story, I somehow still managed to got myself 99 lives. So imagine this right, is about the fact that, well, it's a bit tricky to say this right about now, because I know for a fact it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure, and thank you lag for able to save me, because obviously if I somehow get hit by that particular projectile as one of those methless creature-like enemies as far as I'm usually concerned, that if I dare fall off, obviously my score counter will reset back to 0, so this means I'm probably not going to get my chance to get a glorious S rank. And I will say, getting the S rank on the stage is really darn difficult, mainly because you might get hit a lot when it comes to not only certain enemies, but as well as from that, what is going on? Shadow, you'll drop... Oh my god. Why is he slowed down? Well, anyway though, so I'm pretty sure we're almost there at the end right now, so... Thankfully though, this entire section is just a piece of cake. Although, apart from the forms of some enemy placements is usually going around. So, there we go. The end of the world is completed. Now, there's one thing I don't understand is about the fact that I have no idea why does that particular striped bar thing just somehow appears and it doesn't show any text, whilst unlike in Journey Forms of an E3 demo, did somehow show that, since in 2006 in E3, and that could be also applies for Project 06, you know, with the fan-made game, like a remake of any sorts. Well, I suppose no matter what though, I'll take an A anyway, because, well, with all these rings we've somehow accumulated, these rings are pretty much useless in this particular story, so... Anyways, let's move on to, presumably speaking though, the final boss in the entire game, so...
Oh, Chaos Emeralds, Gems of Miracles, please heed my call. I wish to save this world. I wish to cleanse my father's sin, and I wish to talk to Sonic once again. You have given me so many things. Now it is my time to return the favor. I care not what happens to me, but please heed my voice. Sonic, come back. To me. To us.
Wait, she's leaning over. What is she doing? What is she? Oh god, no! 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 Oh my god, this bestiality is confirmed! Oh my god, I can't even believe by saying this, it's... Oh! What have they done? Why does it exist? Oh... Oh my god, this is unbelievable. I will say, the story in this game is even worse than Shadow the Hedgehog. I'm gonna say this right about now. Oh my god, that's just... Ugh, disgusting. Ugh, what is... Ugh, never mind. Well, let's just say, on the positive side of things, is that we are pretty glad to see not only Super Shadow, but also for the first time ever in the Sonic game, to able to feature Super Silver. So, and that is essentially a pretty cool transformation sequence I've ever seen so far, aside from... Ugh. Anyway, so let's just move on into, presumably speaking, onto the final boss in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and as a result, we're about to take on Solaris. So basically, I think in this particular final boss does have two phases that we have to deal with. So obviously this is the first phase of the battle. So the best strategy I can think of is that, as you can tell, since we're going to be playing this on the PlayStation 3 version of the game, basically we have to press the triangle button in order to able to switch the characters around between Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and Super Silver, and vice versa. So basically though, if you manage to able to play this on the Xbox 360 version, you press the Y button. Now, in order to able to deal with the first phase right here, you have to immediately switch over to Super Silver, because I honestly have no idea why. The battle starts off you playing as Super Sonic, and obviously you have to quickly switch things around into Super Shadow and Super Silver respectively. So I honestly have no idea how this works. So it's a bit of a minor annoying hiccup when the fight starts off. But I will admit though right away, this particular boss battle is actually not too bad. Although, despite it's a bit confusing at first glance, although once you get the hang of it though, it's actually not too shabby. So on the first part is that you have to take control of the forms of Super Silver in order to able to use the psychokinesis to able to toss back at specific projectiles right back at Solaris. Now once you're able to done with that part, you obviously move on to Super Shadow, which we've already done, is that we have to build up with your Chaos Energy, so just in case we can able to bring up some Chaos Spear, and obviously you can able to deal the amount of attack onto Solaris. And then once you're done with that, we can pretty much move on to the last part of the fight, where basically though is about the fact that we have to take control of Super Sonic. So basically we have to build up with the actual gauge, although we have to press the square button as soon as when that particular gauge is completely full up, and that way you can able to deal with the forms of the devastating damage into Solaris right here by simply able to do a massive boost right at him. So, and basically that's all you have to do for this battle. So because of that though, specifically on the first phase, because as far as whenever we get to the second phase, it gets a little bit more chaotic, and on top of all that stuff though, it gets a little bit more, well, let's say, epic and intense at the same time. I will admit it though right away. Although I must say it's about the fact that this particular final boss battle is definitely a lot more funner to fight than the forms of how it does it in the time meter from Sonic Generations. So I will say that right about now. But I'm really hoping about the fact that when Sonic Cross Shadow Generations is coming, I'm really hoping about the fact that the final boss in Shadow Generations is not going to get messy, unlike in a time meter from Sonic Generations. So, Anyway, the first phase of Solaris is done.
Is it over?
No, it's not over yet.
I guess it's not gonna be that easy.
Okay, apparently the Solaris Phase 2 just somehow turns into a Legend of Zelda shield design. Now, I'm not joking when I'm saying this, it literally looks like a shield symbol from The Legend of Zelda, but either way, I'm guessing the reason why they decided to come up like this is because that was around that time when, I would say, when the first The Legend of Zelda game did somehow became, let's just say, 20 years old during that time, since in 2006 or something, but either way. So here we go, on to the second phase of the fight. Now I will say though, this design looks pretty interesting, despite it was actually a ripoff of that particular Zelda shield design, but I digress. But I will say though, the music is really awesome. And I will say is about the fact that I think it's probably recommended if you really want to try to deal the amount of damage to the forms of Phase 2 of Solaris, that basically we always have to make sure we have to take control of not only Super Sonic, but also with Super Shadow respectively. Because the thing is with Silver though, I was trying to able to actually toss the actual projectiles right back at Solaris Phase 2, but nothing actually happened. So because of that though, mainly because there's too much stuff on screen. So because of that though, and just like it wants how it does in Sonic Adventure 2 with the final hazard, final boss, basically though is about the fact that the more you're trying to spend on the fight, obviously your rings will decide to deplete. And thankfully though, you can able to switch between these characters on the fly by simply pushing a button rather than just going on to the opposite side of the Space Colony arc. So basically though, that's essentially how I can usually describe about the forms of the actual final boss in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. So either way, and no matter what though, I think this is as far as I can try and able to discuss upon in terms of the forms of what is going to be happening during the forms of the later days to come. All I will say is about the fact that it looks like no matter what though, is about the fact that recently the Kung Fu Panda film franchise has actually reached into $2 billion box office combined, which I'm not exactly sure how do I describe about this, although mind you, because of how the fact I'm pretty concerned about the fact that what's going to be up next for Kung Fu Panda in general, aside from the fact that we've already got the fourth film has been released so far during the forms of the American version. And speaking of which, I believe we've only got about 6 more days to go until the UK version of that film will be releasing, so even then though, I'm still curious to check it out. So either way though, and kind of thing about it though, is about the fact that I was really hoping that Super Shadow will become playable at some point in Shadow Generations portion of that particular Sonic Generations remaster, because if that will happen, oh man, it'll be so amazing to see Super Shadow once again, since in not only Sonic Adventure 2, but also Shadow the Hedgehog, and even Sonic 06, I mean, that'll be amazing. So, I really wish about the fact that Super Silver will get it implemented, but unfortunately though, this is the only time you can able to play as Super Silver during that time, unless if you want to count the forms of some mobile games between Sonic Dash, alongside with the forms of Sonic Forces Speed Battle. Oh yeah, and something's worth noting for, yeah, it looks like that both Sonic the Hedgehog and Angry Birds crossover event has already been ended. Journey forms have been not only in Sonic Dash, but also with Sonic Forces Speed Battle, and much more. So yeah, it kind of sucks honestly, because that was actually quite an interesting collaboration as far as I'm usually concerned with. So, anyway, so once you do enough hits on him though, obviously that was it. That's the entire final boss in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. I'm surprised it doesn't take me that long though, because obviously if you try to beat the entire final boss in the quickest way imaginable, you can get yourself a really big time bonus right there, just like the forms of how it does it in Silver's Dusty Desert, if you be quick enough. So, and obviously like I mentioned this before, the rings amount is pretty useless because obviously the shopping thing does not exist in the final story, which I'm not exactly sure why that was implemented, but oh well. So as you can tell, we can able to grab some even more gold medals for the Soliana gold medals. So yeah, which basically means we somehow completed all these stories, including S ranking the last boss, and pretty much everything else. So with that said, let's watch the ending of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. So...
Did you destroy it?
No. That is the true Solaris.
Look, Elise. This is Solaris, the flame of hope.
It's so beautiful.
When the flame has grown large enough, our world will change. Solaris will allow us to control time and move through history. People will be able to rectify past mistakes and avoid bitter fate.
Will we be able to see Mama?
Yes, Elise. We'll both be able to see your mother once again.
This is where everything began. Who knew such a tiny flame could bring such devastation? If we put out this flame, Solaris will never exist. And then we'll never have to worry about the flames of disaster, right? But our encounter... You and I will never meet. It will never have happened. To tell the truth, I don't care what happens to the world.
Elise, just smile.
Miss Elise? It felt like someone was calling me. I'm sure it's just the wind. Of course. But it felt so familiar somehow.
So yeah, that was it folks, that was the entire ending of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. My god, the story is a mess. Like, usually it's not very entertaining, but it's also about the fact that it's also very confusing, and on top of all that stuff though, it is so underutilized with how the factor with Sonic's story plays out to be, because like I said before, it's about the fact that it involves around rescuing Princess Elise multiple times in Sonic's story, and as far as Shadow's story and Silver's story is concerned, they are both interesting to say the least. To know about the forms of the entire backstory of how with the forms of Princess Elise and Solaris plays out to be. So, as a result, no matter what though, I'm a little bit disappointed about the fact that Sonic never encounters Mephiles, the main villain of this entire story, once. Like, I can usually relate to the fact that they usually just put up the forms of the Chaos Emerald on a huge target on Sonic's head, but since these two never react, it leads to a very empty feeling. So, as a result, yeah, the actual heroes are idiots, and the villains can be either just as stupid sometimes, or just there for the sake of having a bad guy. And on top of that, it has a lot of emphasis on time travel. Like, it's so easily screwed up if you don't establish any of those plot devices all about the forms of time travel. Like, this game doesn't do that. As a result, you have to go through unanswered questions. Questions that didn't exist in the first place. So, yeah, as a result, no matter what though, yeah, the story sucks. It really blows. So, anyway, and let's get to the forms of another things I want to mention about, and that's what appears to be about the fact that obviously this entire playthrough is not exactly done just yet, because as far as I mentioned this before, since in Journey Forms of on Wednesday, we're about to decide able to tackle through some extra content, ranging from possibility of multiplayer, or perhaps even maybe the majority of the DLC, so hopefully we'll stay tuned for that, until specifically during the forms of the upcoming weeks to come. Although it might be extremely lengthy though, especially notable that unlike in Sonic Unleashed, for the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3, that basically though we actually able to tackle through every single DLC stages based off on the continents that we did somehow manage to went into. So yeah, don't expect things too much about the fact that it will be pretty lengthy later on. So now as far as I'm aware, the actual theme song in the background you might barely hear, which appears to be by the forms of My Destiny. That's what the main theme actually comes from. At least specifically on this death credit sequence right there. So, no matter what though, yeah, that's as far as we can able to explain any of these specific solutions, especially noticeable because, well, thank goodness the game is over. Well, so we think. Especially noticeable because, like I said earlier, that we're about to tackle through the DLC next. So, because of that though, yeah, this might take a bit while, especially noticeable because, well, there's some fun to be had around here with the majority of the forms of this game, I feel like. Well, apart from those side of things though, yeah, let's get into my final thoughts of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and I can definitely tell about the fact that it's a pretty miserable 3D Sonic game, and it's especially noticeable it's definitely is one of the worst Sonic games ever. Although I say it's the worst, probably not, or it's awfully close between both this, alongside with the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis for the Game Boy Advance, and let's not forget ourselves with Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric though, because that game's atrocious. And usually relatively speaking though, there are some positive things I can say about the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and as a result, I do manage to able to enjoy the gameplay style for Sonic the Hedgehog, because obviously to me though, he's probably the best character in the game, despite with his missing features ranging from jumping onto enemies normally, just like in Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes used to be, and relatively speaking now, I have no idea why, that this game decides able to ditch a lot of those characters can no longer jump on enemies like we usually do, so I just have no words to able to noticing this. And also, I will say, Blaze the Cat is also very enjoyable to play as, even though she did jack crap in the story, but she's at least fun to play with in my opinion. And relatively speaking now is about the fact that the soundtrack in this game is probably the best part about the game for me. Like, I enjoy every single aspect about the forms of every single level stages when it comes to musical set pieces, and on top of that with certain theme songs in the background and anything else of that in general. And I do enjoy the forms of the majority of the music in this game more than in Shadow the Hedgehog, at least to me anyway. And graphically speaking though, I think the game looks a bit passable. While the level environments can be pretty gorgeous at times, nothing comes across as dazzling to me, with every other character models except for human models constructed pretty nicely in my eyes, and it definitely holds up with the forms of an early Xbox 360 title or an early PlayStation 3 title for a Sonic game. However, the presentation on the other hand is pretty bad. Like, the lip sync is terrible, and the character animations are way too puppet-like, even the human characters like Elise, and the voice acting to me though is one of the worst the series has ever produced. Like, I understand for the fact that they still continued back in the day, they still managed to able to support full kids voice acting ever since in Sonic X, you know, with the animated series as far as I'm aware. And another thing is worth noting for, as I mentioned this before, the story in this game really blows. And I will say, it's about the fact that, you know, this game's story-wise is a lot more worse than the forms of how it does it for Shadow the Hedgehog, like I said before. Not only because it's convoluted, but it's also confusing, and on top of that, I will say this right now, Elise as a character is my most hated character in the entire Sonic universe. Wanna know why? She doesn't do anything in this story. In addition to being kidnapped more times than they can stupidly count, she doesn't be bothered to be a very stronger character. Like, in some situation becomes dire, she just backs away and clashes her hands together. For the love of goodness, you're a princess, woman! Show some little authority! Your father told you to be a very strong queen. What, you're stubborn? Oh, goodness. I just don't want to think about her anymore. I mean, thankfully though, about the fact that in the future Sonic games to come, since in Sonic Unleashed, alongside with the forms of other Sonic games like Sonic Frontiers, thankfully Sonic does not mention the forms of that specific character ever again. Well, unless, if you ever played LEGO Dimensions, if you managed to interact with one of those random LEGO characters, then he did mention about her name briefly, but not entirely for its full explanation. But either way, at least we are glad about the fact that, as far as I'm usually saying this right now, Sonic 06 is officially non-canon. So yeah, we can totally see why that a lot of people just really wants to move on to a much more better Sonic games in the future, ranging from Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, and even with Sonic Frontiers, and much more really, including Sonic Mania. I mean, sure, there are some stinkers out there, specifically with Sonic Forces, and probably Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episodes 1 and 2, which, yeah, we'll get to those shortly after, I guess. So, and yeah, that's what I can really say about it. I mean, it is definitely not the greatest Sonic games ever. It's a pretty bad one, admittedly though. So, yeah, that's what I can really talk about it. I mean, I got nothing more to ask. So, anyways though, the last story segment, as I said before, is completely done. So, yeah, and suffice to say for this point, folks, is that we got the endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. It's that we're about to show off the entire downloadable content, or DLC, for Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. And I think the best way to start things off, it appears to be Team Attack Amigo. So I'll see you guys until our next Monday. Later, fellas.